Cain, the marked man, and the birth of a godless civilization.
Every civilization is built on an idea. But what happens when that idea is birthed, not from obedience, but from rebellion? The story of Cain is not just about a man who murdered his brother. It is the blueprint of a generation that would attempt to live without God. Let us journey into Genesis and uncover the spiritual code hidden within Cain's life and the world he built.
The wound of rejection. Genesis 4:1-7. When Eve held her newborn son, she whispered with joy, "With God's help, I've brought forth a man." But her joy would turn to sorrow. This child, made in God's image, would be the first to reject it. Cain came to worship God, but his heart wasn't in it. He brought an offering, not his best crops, just whatever was easy. Meanwhile, his brother Abel gave God his finest lamb, holding nothing back. God saw Cain's half-hearted gift and warned him, "If you do what's right, I'll accept you." But Cain wouldn't listen. His pride burned hotter than any altar fire. When God told him sin was waiting to attack him, Cain opened the door wide. The real tragedy wasn't just that Cain killed Abel. The real tragedy began earlier, when Cain thought he could worship God his own way, on his own terms. He wanted God's approval without surrendering his heart. The first murder. Genesis 4:8-10. Cain rose up against Abel in the field, not in the city, in the field, where no altars speak but blood. The earth drank the blood of the righteous. And God said, "The voice of your brother's blood cries to me from the ground." Genesis 4:10. Oh, brothers and sisters, blood has a voice, and God hears every unjust shedding of it. Cain became the father of every man who lives by strength, not spirit. The first builder of civilization without a God consciousness. The mark and the exile. Genesis 4:11-16. God places a mark on Cain, not to curse him, but to preserve him. You see, divine judgment is never just punitive, it is redemptive. Cain is exiled east of Eden, to a land called Nod, meaning wandering. This man is now a wanderer with a mark, a builder without a foundation, a father of cities, but not of righteousness. He was cast from the presence of the Lord. Genesis chapter 4:16. And here lies the true tragedy, not the murder, but the loss of presence. Compare this to David in Psalm 51:11. "Cast me not away from thy presence." Cain never repented. He was more afraid of consequences than of broken fellowship. And so, a civilization begins without God. The civilization of Cain. Genesis 4:17-24. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. He built a city and named it after his son, Enoch. Genesis 4:17. At first glance, this verse seems simple, but it pulses with prophetic significance. Fresh from being exiled from God's presence, Genesis 4:16, Cain's immediate act is to construct a city. Not a sanctuary for worship, but a monument to human ambition, the first civilization founded apart from divine order. Notice the name, Enoch, after his son, not Elohim, after his God. Here, Cain becomes the architect of secularism, the forerunner of Babylon, a society built on legacy, not obedience, on human glory, not holiness. This is the birth of man-centered culture, a blueprint for every empire to come. Babylon, Egypt, Rome, every modern nation that elevates humanism above heaven. The first city, born of rebellion, foreshadows a world where man's name replaces God's. Human mastery versus spiritual decline. From the bloodline of Cain, the first murderer, the first exile, emerged a legacy of ingenuity that would shape the course of human civilization. Genesis chapter 4, verses 20 through 22 introduces us to three pivotal figures: Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal-Cain. Each represents a foundational pillar of societal development. Jabal, the father of tent dwelling and livestock herding, pioneered the systems of agriculture and commerce. His innovations laid the groundwork for economy and trade, the lifeblood of any thriving society. Jubal, the father of all who play the harp and flute, unlocked the power of music and artistic expression. In him we see the birth of culture, entertainment, and the emotional language that binds communities together. Tubal-Cain, the master craftsman who forged tools from bronze and iron, ushered in the age of technology and industry. His advancements in metallurgy would revolutionize construction, warfare, and the very infrastructure of civilization. At first glance, these achievements appear noble, even divine. After all, they reflect God's original mandate to humanity in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. The Amplified Bible expounds on this, emphasizing humanity's call to harness creation's resources in the service of God and man. Dominion over the earth was always part of God's design, yet herein lies the tragedy. Cain's descendants perfected dominion while rejecting the dominator. They cultivated the gifts but denied the giver. Their story reveals a profound spiritual paradox: how mankind can wield God-given creativity to build a world against God's will. This is the essence of Cain's civilization: progress without piety, innovation without intimacy, mastery without worship. Jabal's economic systems, Jubal's cultural arts, and Tubal-Cain's technological marvels, though impressive, became monuments to human self-sufficiency rather than offerings of gratitude to the Creator. In this, we see the foreshadowing of every empire that would rise and fall throughout history. Babylon with its towering pride, Egypt with its deified pharaohs, Rome with its militarized might, and every modern society that elevates human achievement above divine authority. The pattern remains unchanged. When God's gifts are divorced from God's glory, what begins as progress inevitably decays into rebellion. This is the mystery of iniquity, that man would use the very breath of God to resist the will of God. It is the age-old exchange, choosing the blessings over the blesser, the creation over the creator. Cain's lineage stands as a sobering reminder. A civilization that builds without worship may thrive for a season, but it will never truly live. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Mark chapter 8, verse 36. The question echoes through the ages, from Cain's city to our own.
Lamech, the generation of open rebellion. Genesis 4, 23 through 24. And Lamech said to his wives, I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. Genesis 4:23. In the dark crescendo of Cain's lineage, Lamech emerges as the seventh generation from Adam, a number that in Scripture symbolizes completion and perfection, yet here marks the full corruption of human rebellion. What began with Cain's murderous jealousy now reaches its poisonous maturity in Lamech, who embodies the threefold perversion of God's order. 1. The perversion of marriage. Lamech becomes history's first recorded polygamist, taking 2 wives, Genesis 4:19, in direct defiance of God's Edenic design. A man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, singular, Genesis 2:24. Where Adam knew sacred union, Lamech demands selfish excess, the first to institutionalize the commodification of relationships. 2. The perversion of justice. His chilling boast, I have killed a man for wounding me, reveals a heart beyond Cain's remorse. Cain at least trembled before judgment, Genesis 4:13 through 14.
Lamech murders and glorifies his violence. Worse, he weaponizes God's mercy. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. Verse 24. Divine protection, once a mark of grace for a trembling Cain, becomes Lamech's license for arrogance. 3. The perversion of legacy. In Lamech, the Cainite project reaches its zenith. A civilization with culture, but no covenant. Jabal's tents, Jubal's music, Tubal-Cain's tools, all divorced from altar smoke. A people with power, but no presence, building cities, forging empires, yet strangers to the God who gave them breath. A generation that murders without remorse and builds without prayer. The prototype of every Babylon to come. This is the mystery of iniquity, perfected. Man wielding God's gifts to overthrow God's government. Lamech's prideful song echoes through history. In the sword-swinging boasts of Assyria, the godless opulence of Rome, and the self-deifying hubris of modern humanism, Lamech stands as eternal warning. A society that severs dominion from devotion will inevitably exchange the fear of God for the worship of man. A holy seed arises. Genesis 4:25-26. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore Seth, saying, God has appointed me another seed. Genesis 4:25. And to Seth was born Enosh. And then, for the first time since Eden, then men began to call on the name of the Lord. Genesis 4:26. You see, while Cain built a city, God was building a lineage, one that would carry his name and worship. Cain's civilization versus God's kingdom, a theological contrast. The chasm between Cain's civilization and God's kingdom unveils the fundamental choice before humanity, a choice between autonomy and allegiance, between human empire and divine dominion. 1. Cain's civilization, the kingdom of man, east of Eden, Genesis 4:16. Cain's descendants erected a world marked by displacement and defiance. Their achievements, though impressive, were stained by their origin. A geography of exile. Every innovation, every city, like Enoch, was built outside God's presence, a monument to self-sufficiency rather than surrender. A legacy of names, not worship. They named their domains after men, Enoch, Jabal, Jubal, Tubal-Cain, not after God. Their glory was horizontal, not vertical, celebrating human achievement while ignoring divine authority. Progress without purity. Arts, technology, and commerce flourished, yet so did pride, vengeance, and bloodshed. Lamech's boast, Genesis 4:23-24. Their mastery of earth was untethered from heaven. This is the prototype of every human empire. Babylon's towers, Egypt's pyramids, Rome's roads, all testaments to what happens when civilization builds without bowing. 2. God's kingdom, the reign of divine order. In stark contrast, God's people are called to a different paradigm, one where dominion flows from devotion. Altars before advancements, from Abraham's sacrifices, Genesis 12:7, to Jacob's Bethel, Genesis 28:19, God's landmarks are places of encounter, not just enterprise. A culture of surrender. Mastery is not condemned, but consecrated. The arts, sciences, and labor are sanctified when offered in worship. Exodus 31:1-5, Psalm 150. The economy of heaven. Instead of Lamech's 77-fold vengeance, God's kingdom operates on 70 times 7 forgiveness, Matthew 18:22. Where Cain's line ruled by fear, God's people reign through faith and love. The eternal choice. The two kingdoms stand in opposition. One is built on human strength and collapses under its own pride, Proverbs 16:18. The other is founded on the rock and endures forever, Matthew 7:24-25. Cain's legacy whispers still, you can be like gods, Genesis 3:5. But God's call thunders through the ages. Seek first the kingdom. Matthew 6:33. The question remains, which civilization will we build? A fleeting monument to man, or an eternal dwelling for God? Prophetic parallels, then and now. We stand at the same crossroads today, witnessing Cain's civilization reborn in our time. 1. The empty triumphs of modernity. Cities of steel, temples of void. Skyscrapers pierce clouds, yet prayer closets gather dust. We've engineered smarter phones but forgotten the effectual fervent prayer, James 5:16, that moves heaven. The new gods, AI, entertainment, and humanism. We worship algorithms, celebrate progress, yet erase the in the beginning God, Genesis 1:1, from our collective consciousness. The gifts are exalted, the giver is banned. Education without light. Schools teach what to think, but not who to know. Knowledge puffs up, 1 Corinthians 8:1, while the wisdom from above, James 3:17, pure, peaceable, and full of mercy, is dismissed as archaic. 2. The spirit of Lamech rises again. Moral inversion, abortion called choice, sexual chaos labeled freedom, violence justified as justice. Isaiah's warning echoes, woe to those who call evil good, Isaiah 5:20. Pride as policy. Like Lamech, our culture boasts in its rebellion, multiplying Cain's defiance with hashtags and legislation. Mercy is twisted, not as a call to repentance, but as a license for lawlessness. 3. The remnant and the altar. Yet, as in Noah's day, God's kingdom advances in counterpoint. Noah's ark was built on obedience. While Cain's cities reveled, Noah's hammer struck in faith. Hebrews 11:7. The world drowned. The altar's remnant survived. Fire still falls on true altars. From Elijah's Carmel, 1 Kings 18, to the upper room's Pentecost, Acts 2. God answers when men kneel. Every cry of holy, holy, holy shakes hell's foundations. The inevitable end. Cain's cities, whether ancient Enoch or modern metropolises, are doomed to the same fate. The world is passing away, 1 John 2:17. Stock markets crash, empires fade, but the word of the Lord endures forever, 1 Peter 1:25. The flood is coming again, not of water, but of fire, 2 Peter 3:7. Yet even now, the ark is being built, not of gopher wood, but of living stones, 1 Peter 2:5. A people of prayer, preparing for eternity. The choice is yours. Build with Cain and be buried with Babylon, or kneel at the altar and rise with the remnant. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Mark 8:36. The question still burns. Answer wisely. Conclusion. Choose this day where you will build. The ancient divide still stands. Will we labor in Nod, the land of wandering, far from God's face? Or will we build on the rock that outlasts empires? 1. The illusion of Cain's legacy. We see his blueprint everywhere. Glass towers where God's glory should dwell. Trending anthems that drown out heaven's hymns. Movements that deify man but dethrone Christ. Yet God thunders. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm 127 verse 1. Human monuments, no matter how dazzling, are sandcastles against the tide of eternity. 2. The Enoch alternative. Amid Cain's clamor, one man walked with God. Genesis 5:24. Not a city builder, but a God seeker. Not a self-namer, but a heaven taker. This is God's antidote to modern Babylon. Not more noise, but more devotion. Not greater platforms, but holier altars. 3. The Sethite call. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Genesis 4:26. This is our mandate. Build, but with brokenness. Psalm 51:17. Create, but in covenant. Lead, but on our knees. Let steel and silicon marvels rise if they must. But first, let smoke from surrendered hearts ascend. The final tally. One day, all construction sites will silence. Cain's cities will burn. 2 Peter 3:10. Enoch's footsteps will echo in eternity. Every altar's ember will blaze anew. So build, but build wisely. Lay bricks in Babylon, and your labor drowns. Tend the altar's flame, and your legacy walks into glory. He who does the will of God abides forever. 1 John 2:17. The choice was Eden's. The choice is ours. Choose well.
If you were blessed by this revelation, do not remain silent. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this is a move, not a message. Let the nations drink from the well of the word. You are not just a viewer, you are a gatekeeper in your generation. May the Lord increase your hunger, enlarge your capacity, and empower you to walk in purpose. Till we meet again, remain in the will of God.